He looked at me, tired, worn, with a stranger's eyes, and asked, "So, what happens now?" And for the first time, I didn't have money to fix it, only the truth. The rain tapped gently on the conservatory's glass roof, like a polite stranger asking to come in. I sat in the antique chair my father once owned, a cup of untouched tea cooling in my hand, and read the final letter from my late uncle's attorney. "You are now the sole inheritor of the estate, liquid and property included. Estimated value $13.7 million. It should have felt like relief, but it didn't. I glanced at the photo on the mantel. My son James, 6 years old and covered in cake, laughing as I held him. That photo was over 15 years old now. We hadn't laughed like that in a long time. He didn't know yet about the money, about any of it. And that scared me. You see, when you come into sudden fortune after years of scraping by, your world doesn't just change, it reveals. It reveals who loves you because of who you are and who loves you for what you have. And I wasn't sure which one James was anymore. He was 21 now, studying business, always asking for money, new sneakers, upgraded phones, Uber rides instead of buses. He never asked how I was doing, never stayed for long. I worried I'd failed him, not financially, but morally. So I stood there, in my quiet, inherited house, and made a decision that still makes my chest ache. I would tell him I'd lost everything. I would pretend I was bankrupt, jobless, broke. And I'd see what he did. Not because I wanted to trap him, but because I needed to know. Would he still show up? Would he still love me? Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you're hooked in and ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now, let us begin. The gym was packed, but I kept to myself, earbuds in, hoodie up. The weights were just noise. What I really wanted was silence, peace, something I hadn't felt in a while. I got a text from Dad earlier. "Can you come by tonight? Need to talk." I hadn't replied. Not because I didn't care. I just didn't feel like another lecture. Lately, that's all it felt like when we talked. Like I was disappointing him. Like he was trying to pull me into his little world of hard-earned money and discipline and character. He never understood me. I didn't want to be like him. I wanted to be bigger, flashier, known. I didn't want to fix cars like he did. I wanted to own the garage. Still, I missed Mom. And Dad had been quieter lately. I told myself I'd go see him this weekend. Maybe. I took another selfie in the locker room mirror, captioned it, "Grind never stops." But it did. For a moment. Because under all the flexing and filters, I was tired. And a small part of me wished Dad would just see me. That night, I sat across from James at the kitchen table, hands shaking just slightly. I cleared my throat. "Son, I didn't want to tell you like this, but it's all gone." He blinked. "What do you mean?" "The money, the shop, the savings, all of it. I made a bad investment and lost everything." Silence. He stared at me, stunned. I waited. Waited to see who my son really was. James sat still, shoulders stiff, as if waiting for a punchline. "You're joking," he finally said, a laugh cracking awkwardly from his throat. "Come on, Dad. You? Broke?" I didn't smile. I didn't blink. His face changed. "You're serious," he said, voice slow now. I nodded. "I put everything into a new supplier for the garage. They scammed me. Everything's gone. Even the house is mortgaged. I'll have to sell within the month." It was quiet after that. James stared at the old wooden table between us as if he might find a hidden truth carved into it. I didn't expect a hug. I didn't expect tears. But I also didn't expect him to say what he said next. "So, what now? You want me to move back in? Help out, or something?" His tone wasn't cruel, just confused, defensive. I shook my head. "No. I just thought you should know. I may need some time to figure things out." James swallowed. "Okay. That's all." "Okay." Later that night, I heard him open the fridge, curse softly, and then slam it shut. We'd always had it stocked. It was the first time I'd left it empty on purpose. He walked past me in the hallway, stopped. "You want me to chip in for groceries or something?" he asked, eyes not quite meeting mine. I didn't know how to answer, because part of me did want him to offer, but another part of me wanted him to just do it without being asked. "No, son, it's all right." He nodded and went to bed. The next morning, I found an energy drink and a granola bar missing from the pantry. He didn't say goodbye when he left. I sat in my car for 20 minutes after class, staring at my phone, reading and rereading Dad's text from last night. Lost everything. I didn't know how to feel. He'd always been the one to fix things. Scraped knees, flat tires, tax forms. He just knew how to keep it all together. But now he looked smaller, like something had folded inward. I thought of asking my friend Luke if I could crash with him a few nights, but I didn't. Instead, I drove to a diner, ordered coffee I couldn't afford, and sat in a booth alone, scrolling job listings I had no intention of applying for. When you grow up thinking there's always a net beneath you, it's hard to imagine falling. Now it felt like we were both free-falling, and no one knew who'd hit the ground first. That evening, he was fixing a leaky pipe under the sink when I walked in. I stood there for a moment. "Hey." He didn't look up. "Hey. You eat today?" He chuckled bitterly. "Depends. Do coffee and anxiety count?" I smirked in spite of myself. "Guess we're on the same diet." He looked up then, eyes tired but warm. "I'm sorry, James." "For what?" "For not telling you sooner. For not preparing you better." I swallowed. Something in his voice cracked a part of me open. But instead of offering comfort, I said, "It's fine. I'm not a kid." He nodded. "I know. But somehow I felt like one." If your parents suddenly told you they had lost everything, money, stability, home, how would you react? Would it change your relationship with them? Be honest in the comments. The days that followed felt like a play I couldn't get out of. I was performing poverty, and James was acting like he didn't care. But I knew him. I saw the small changes. He stopped asking for money, stopped disappearing for long nights with friends. He was home more. Silent, yes, but present. Still, I didn't know if that meant he cared about me or just didn't know where else to go. Every time I caught myself watching him,
through doorways, across the dinner table, asleep on the worn couch in the den, I had to remind myself, this is what you asked for. You wanted to see what he'd do when everything was gone. But now that I was watching him stumble through the ashes, I wasn't sure I had the right. One night I saw him open the job search tab again on his laptop. He closed it 5 seconds later. "Looking for something?" I asked from across the room. He jumped slightly. "No, just bored." I nodded and let the silence settle. I couldn't breathe in that house sometimes. Everything felt heavy. The floor creaked louder, the lights seemed dimmer, even Dad's old shirts smelled like stress now. But I couldn't leave. Not because I didn't have anywhere to go, I did, but because some stupid part of me didn't want to abandon him. Not yet. Still, I didn't know how to be there for him. What do you say to the guy who always fixed things when now he can't fix his own life? One morning, I offered to do the grocery run. He looked shocked. "You sure?" "Yeah," I said, grabbing his keys before I changed my mind. Figured I'd do something useful. He tried to smile. "I appreciate it." I bought store-brand everything, held the receipt tight in my palm all the way home like proof that I was trying, that maybe I was becoming something. He barely looked at the bags when I got back. "Hope you like off-brand cereal," I joked. He didn't laugh. The hardest part was not comforting him. One night I heard him pacing in the kitchen. I stepped out and saw him standing by the sink, gripping the edge of the counter. "Couldn't sleep?" He startled. "Just too much in my head." I nodded. "Yeah, me too." He hesitated. "You think you'll get the garage back?" I wanted to say yes. Instead, I lied deeper into the lie. "No, that chapter's closed." He looked down at the floor, then back at me. "Would it help if I got a job?" That was the moment I felt something rip inside me. Because I could see he hated asking, but he was asking anyway. And I should have felt proud. Instead, I felt ashamed. "No," I said too quickly. "Focus on school." He didn't argue, just nodded. Jaw tight, eyes unreadable. I didn't sleep that night either. Something about his eyes when I offered, it didn't look like gratitude. It looked like guilt, like he didn't want me to see him weak. But the truth was, I already had, and I didn't think less of him. I just wished he'd stop pretending I hadn't. Have you ever held back from helping someone you love because you didn't know if they'd accept it or if you'd make it worse? Share your story in the comments.
It started with a knock on the door just past midnight. I woke up with that heavy, sinking feeling in my chest. The kind that used to mean something bad had happened at work. But there was no work now, just the house and the silence. James opened his door too. We met in the hallway, groggy and confused. The knock came again, louder this time. I opened it to find our neighbor, Mrs. Delgado, clutching her phone, eyes wide and teary. "There's a leak in the basement," she said breathlessly. "Water everywhere. You're the only one I could think of who might know what to do. Please." Without thinking, I grabbed my old toolbox and followed her across the lawn. James trailed behind, barefoot and shivering in his hoodie, not saying a word. Her basement looked like a swimming pool. Pipes gurgled, water spread beneath old storage boxes, and everything smelled like rust and panic. I rolled up my sleeves, dropped to my knees, and got to work. But I needed a second pair of hands. "James," I called over my shoulder, "hand me the wrench in the red slot." He blinked. "Which one's that?" "The one shaped like... Here, just come here." He kneeled beside me, awkwardly gripping tools, holding flashlights, getting splashed in the face by cold, dirty water without complaint. Something about the absurdity of it made me laugh. He looked at me like I'd lost it. "What?" You look like you're about to cry. That's 'cause I'm freezing and covered in pipe water, he said deadpan. We both started laughing then. Quiet, exhausted laughter in the middle of chaos. By the time we stopped the leak, helped Mrs. Delgado move her boxes upstairs, and walked back home soaked and shivering, it was almost 3 a.m. James collapsed on the couch. "You good?" I asked him, handing him a dry towel. He nodded. That was insane. I sat beside him. "You handled it well." He smirked. "Didn't feel like it. I thought I was going to electrocute myself trying to unplug that extension cord." "You didn't?" "I almost did." Silence. Then he asked it. "Why'd you help her?" I paused. "Because she asked." He looked at me like that wasn't a real answer. But then he nodded. "Yeah, okay." Later, as we both sat in dry clothes, sipping tea I'd managed to scrape together from the last of the pantry, James surprised me. "She said you used to help her, late husband, fix things." I nodded. "She said you always refused money." I did. He was quiet. "You ever think about starting that kind of work again? Repairs? Handy stuff?" I looked at him. "You think people want that now? Everyone calls us service. No one wants the old guy who charges too little and takes too long." "I think people want to be treated like humans, not invoices." His words hit me harder than I expected. Because they weren't just about neighbors. They were about me. The next day, we were still tired, still sore. But James cooked. It was just eggs and toast, and he burned the edges. But it was something. I didn't say anything about the charcoal-smelling bread. I just ate it. Because it was the first time in weeks he'd done something without being asked. And I think he knew it mattered. This act begins the emotional thaw. Their forced teamwork opens space for something resembling trust. It's still tentative, still unspoken, but there's laughter, cooperation, and even care. A subtle shift from resistance to engagement. I wasn't trying to snoop. I was just trying to find the scissors. The kitchen drawer was a mess, and I figured maybe Dad had tucked them into the side cabinet, the one he always kept locked when I was younger. But it wasn't locked anymore. Inside were papers, folders, old receipts, faded photographs. I hesitated. Then I pulled one out. It was a photo of my mom, sitting on the back steps with me in her lap, maybe 2 years old. We were both laughing, and she had that carefree look in her eyes, the one I could never quite remember, except in pictures. Underneath that photo was a printed email, time-stamped 10 years ago. Declined loan application, mortgage risk too high. Below that, another. James's private school tuition, past due. And under that, a list of pawned items. One of them was her engagement ring. I sat on the kitchen floor, papers spread around me, feeling like I'd just stumbled into a war I didn't know had been fought. All those times I thought he was just being cheap. All the times I'd rolled my eyes when he said we couldn't afford new things. He'd been bleeding money to keep me afloat, and I never saw it. He came in while I was still holding the photo. For a moment, he froze. Then he just said quietly, "Was looking for scissors?" I nodded, throat tight. "You sold Mom's ring," I said. He didn't deny it. "I had to. You were in 3rd grade. She'd just passed. I had no savings. You were grieving, angry. I didn't want you to feel everything falling apart at once." I stared at the photo. "Why didn't you tell me?" He sat across from me on the floor. Because it wasn't your burden to carry. And maybe I didn't want you to think I was weak. My voice cracked. I didn't think you were weak. I thought you didn't care. He flinched, and I hated myself for how often I must have made him feel that way. I watched him cradle that photo like it was a lifeline to a version of himself he didn't remember. And I knew what it felt like to want to go back to a time when things weren't so complicated, when love didn't feel like a transaction. I sighed. She used to sit out there every morning, I said, nodding toward the back steps. Even when it rained, she said the smell of wet earth reminded her she was still alive. He didn't say anything for a while. Then, why'd you tell me you lost everything? The question hit like a nail through my chest. I wanted to lie again, but the truth was leaking out through every crack now. I admitted I was scared that you didn't love me anymore, that I'd raised a son who saw me as a wallet, not a man. He looked up, eyes glossy. That's not fair, he whispered. I know. It was never meant to be. Later that night, he asked if I still had her wedding band. I did. I showed him where I'd hidden it, in the lining of an old winter coat, tucked away in the back of the closet. The metal was dull, but it still shimmered under the hallway light. Think she'd be proud of us? He asked. I swallowed hard. She always said we were stubborn, but she also said we were loyal to the bone. He smiled faintly. Yeah, that sounds like her.
It started with pancakes. Bad ones. James had found an old box of mix in the back of the pantry. The expiration date was faded. He shrugged and used it anyway. I walked into the kitchen to find him squinting at the stove, spatula in one hand, pan smoking like a fire alarm's worst nightmare. You trying to kill us both? I said, sniffing the air. Breakfast or cremation, chef choice. I laughed, really laughed. It echoed through the house like something we'd both forgotten we could do. We sat at the table, chewing charred corners of batter and sipping watery coffee. I used salt instead of sugar, he admitted. That explains a lot. Be honest, you've made worse. Once, I said. When I tried to impress your mother on our first date, I burned spaghetti. Waterless spaghetti. Didn't know you had to boil it? He blinked. You put dry noodles in a pan? Thought sauce would soften them. He laughed so hard he had to spit into a napkin. The house felt different that morning. Not fixed, but softer. Like maybe it wasn't about money or tests or pride anymore. Maybe it was just about two men trying to learn how to love again. Later, we took a walk. First time in weeks. Just around the neighborhood. It was warm for October. Leaves crackled under our feet. He kicked a rock down the road, hands stuffed in his hoodie pocket. Dad, what were you like when you were my age? The question caught me off guard. I smiled. Lost. Reckless. In love with your mom before she even looked my way. What'd you want to be? A musician. He stopped walking. What? Seriously? Had a guitar. Wrote songs. She said my voice made the dog cry. He snorted. She was savage. She was honest. He looked at me for a long time. Why didn't you go for it? I shrugged. Life pulled me another way. Then I added, but I never stopped playing, even after she died. He nodded.
You ever think about doing it again? I chuckled. You want me to start a band now? He shrugged. Why not? You're still cooler than half the dudes I know. That night, I pulled the old guitar case from the closet. Still dusty. Still in tune. He watched me play. Quietly. Reverently. I played her favorite song. The one she made me sing when I thought no one was listening. When I finished, his voice was barely above a whisper. I remember that. You were 5. We danced to it in the living room. You stood on her feet. He smiled, slow and sad. I miss her. I know. And I did something I hadn't done in years. I reached for his shoulder. He didn't flinch. He leaned into it. We sat there, just breathing. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was restless, but because I didn't want the feeling to end. I'd forgotten what it felt like to just be near him without pressure, without expectation, to laugh, to talk, to want to stay. It happened because of a message. One I never meant him to see. One I should have deleted, but I didn't. Dad had left his laptop open again. I wasn't snooping, I swear I wasn't. I just wanted to send myself the song he played last night, the one he said he wrote for Mom. But when I moved the mouse, the screen lit up. And there it was. An email. Subject: Inheritance transfer finalized. I froze. It was from a law firm, sent weeks ago. I clicked. My heart started pounding as I read the first line. As per our recent meeting, the $13.7 million inheritance from your late uncle has been successfully transferred. The rest of it blurred. $13.7 million? What? I kept reading. Buried 3 lines down was a phrase that burned through my stomach. If your son continues to respond well to the character test. Character test. Character test? My blood ran cold. I looked down at my hands. I wasn't shaking. I was numb. I found him in the garage. It was raining hard outside, thunder rumbling low in the distance. He stood there with the email open on his phone. Didn't even look at me. James, you lied to me. I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. I can explain. He laughed. It wasn't joyful. It was shattered. You can explain how you had $13 million and decided to play poverty cosplay with your own son? Please, I said, voice breaking. I didn't do it to hurt you. I needed to know. If I lost everything, would you still care? Would you still see me? Not the money. Me. He looked at me like I was a stranger. I sold my sneakers for gas money last week. I didn't know. I wore the same jeans 3 days in a row to job interviews. My throat tightened. James, you skipped meals so you wouldn't think I was freeloading. His voice cracked then. You didn't want to know who I was, Dad. You wanted to catch me failing. That was the moment everything inside me cracked open. Because he was right. I had set a trap. And even though he passed it, I still failed him. I don't even care about the money, I said, pacing the length of the garage. Do you get that? I cared that we were finally getting close. I thought, for the first time since Mom died, I had you back. He stepped forward, but I stepped back. I didn't trust you, I whispered. He trusted your heart. That's why I did it. No, I said. You trusted the test, not me. He looked like he'd been punched in the gut.
I didn't care. I walked out into the rain, didn't say where I was going, didn't answer when he called after me. He didn't follow. And maybe that's what hurt most. He left that night. I sat in the kitchen staring at the mug he'd used that morning, the one with the chipped rim, the one he used even though we had better ones. Because maybe, just maybe, he was trying to meet me where I was. And I couldn't even be honest with him. I thought about calling him, about telling him it was all a mistake, that I panicked, that I didn't know how else to reach him. But I didn't call. Because I knew what he needed wasn't a message. It was a choice. He needed to decide if what we had, what we almost had, was worth saving. Everything crumbles. The father's lies revealed, the son walks away feeling manipulated, humiliated, and heartbroken. All the progress, all the warmth, they're washed away by one cruel truth: he was never being loved fully. He was being tested.
I stayed at Luke's place that night. Ben the next. But it didn't feel right. Everything was clean, comfortable. Luke's mom made lasagna. His dad offered to help me look for jobs. They meant well. But I felt hollow. Because even though I hated what my father did, I missed him. I missed the stupid way he hummed while fixing the sink. I missed the smell of motor oil and laundry soap on his flannels. I missed our walks and the awful pancakes, and the sound of him laughing when I burned eggs. I missed what we almost had. But every time I thought about going back, I remembered the way he looked at me, as if I were a test to pass, not a son to love. I stared at my phone screen all morning. No missed calls. No texts. Just a single draft message I'd typed and deleted about 12 times. You should have just trusted me. I never hit send, because the truth was, I didn't want to fight. I wanted him to see me. He'd been gone 3 days. The house had never felt this empty. Even when my wife died, there had been noise, casseroles from neighbors, calls from family, soft footsteps of a boy who needed his dad. But now, just stillness. His mug was still by the sink, the one with the crack in the handle. I hadn't moved it. That night, I picked up my guitar. Tried to play. Couldn't finish the first verse. Put it down. Picked it back up. Tried again. Eventually, I found myself outside, barefoot on the back steps. The same place my wife used to sit. The rain had softened the dirt. The smell reminded me I was still alive. Help me. I whispered. Not the God. Not to the night. To her. To the woman who always knew how to reach our son better than I did. I stayed out there until the sky turned orange with morning. Then, I went inside and wrote him a letter. James, I lied. I lied because I was afraid. Not of losing money, of losing you. I thought I had failed you. I thought maybe all you saw in me was a paycheck, a roof, an obligation. I didn't know how to ask if you still needed me, so I made a mess and waited to see if you'd clean it up. And you did. You showed up. You stayed. You offered. And I still couldn't let go of the fear. That's on me. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want it. Not for the inheritance, not for the shop, for us. I miss you. Love. Dad. I walked home at sunset. Didn't tell anyone I was coming. He wasn't outside.
wasn't in the kitchen. But the letter was there, folded neatly, next to his guitar. I read it standing up, then sat on the floor and cried. 10 minutes later, the front door opened. He froze in the entryway when he saw me. Neither of us said anything. Then I whispered, "You could have just asked." He nodded. I know. Silence. Then, "I'm here," I said. His voice cracked. "You don't have to be. I want to be." We didn't hug. We didn't cry in each other's arms. We just stood there. In the same house. On the same page. Finally. They're both broken, both sorry, and finally both willing to meet in the middle. The lie still lingers, but so does the truth of what they've rebuilt. It's not fixed, but the door is open.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as interesting and even more intriguing as I can ever imagine, so do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.